you go through these types of experiences, right? And you want to tell people about them, but then at the same time, you're just like, oh my God, like people are going to look at you like you're crazy or you're insane. And especially with the kind of work we do, it's just like, you know, people are going to look at us like that. It's like, you guys are cops. You're supposed to be logical, and, you know, you can't really be into this kind of stuff. But, you know, once you experience it and you go through that kind of stuff, it's just like, Jesus, this stuff is real.
So we hop in the Jeep. Thankfully, it starts right up. Start driving out towards the road. And the whole time, Mike was like, drive, drive, drive. Like, he's...
Like, I'm yelling it.
Yeah, he's yelling and cussing at me, telling me to get out of there. So I pull up to the road, and I got my high beams on. I got floodlights in the front. And I pull up to the road. And for some reason, I look to the left, the direction that we came from. And standing 30 yards away on the gravel road, which was all lit up at this point from my lights, kind of reflecting off the canopy of the trees, there's this 8-foot tall, gray, humanoid-looking thing.
You just listened to the teaser for this week's members-only episode. If you're a member of the show, you get access to the full episode. This is only a few minutes long. We're just trying to give you a little taste of what you get if you become a member of the show and support Blurry Creatures. We spent a lot of time making this show, and all the members make this happen. So if you want to do that, go to blurrycreatures.com/members, become a member of the show. You get access to Discord groups, Facebook groups, Telegram, and all sorts of other chat places where members can talk about the weird experiences they've had. Yeah, like you got tickets to BlurryCon early, you got links to things before everyone else gets them, and we do monthly chats as well as movie nights. Lots of perks to become a member and support what we're doing here at Blurry Creatures. So once again, blurrycreatures.com/members. Let's get these two police officers on the show and talk about their weird experience.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
Enjoy the journey.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
Are you in uniform?
I just got off work.
Yeah, he just got off work.
Where are you guys? Where are you guys at?
Central Indiana. So I'm about a half hour south of Indianapolis. Yep.
And I'm north of Indianapolis.
Yeah, so right. I wish our listeners could see you now, because then they know, you know.
We have to blur the patches.
Yeah, I'd probably get fired.
It's a good thing this is an audio only.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank God.
It works out for Nate and I as well.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Face for radio.
Dudes, yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for coming on Blurry Creatures. How much do you guys know about our show? I know that.
Yeah, so my wife actually told me about your guys' show. We've been Bigfooting for a little over a year now, and then we had our encounter with the Wendigo, and which drove us to start looking into stuff. So I think my wife listened to a podcast that you guys did with Allie Beth Stuckey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
she listened to that. She's like, you got to listen to these guys. So then I found your podcast and found out you had an episode on Wendigo. I'm like, these guys are awesome. And then literally the day I listened to that is whenever I emailed you.
Well, that's awesome.
That's
wild. And my dad's a huge fan now. He's a member only, like, subscriber.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. That's awesome.
Give Dad a high
dude,
five.
Allie Beth Stuckey, everybody's wife's favorite show.
Oh,
my wife's favorite show too.
Yep.
I was like, you ever heard of this lady? And she's like, oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, she's like, you guys are doing it right. Like, I guess so. We are.
Yeah, whatever works. She's good.
Yeah, that show's been really helpful through our podcast. We have a lot of people email us and say that they found out about us through her. So shout out to Allie Beth.
Kind of blew her mind as well. So
yeah.
that was.
I need to listen to that.
Yeah, for sure.
3 years into a paranormal podcast is hard to encapsulate in 45 minutes.
You just distill it down to 20 minutes and tell us exactly what. Yeah, and like, well,
you got to drink it through a fire hose. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you know about Genesis 6? Let's start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Well, it's official, Luke. We've had rangers on the res come on the show. Now we've got 2 police officers.
Yeah, we have.
Coming on Blurry Creatures, talking about their encounter. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast. You can tell a little about yourself, or you don't have to say anything. Plead the fifth.
Okay. Oh, geez.
It wouldn't be a great podcast.
Yeah,
if you
it's
say
probably
horrible.
Probably a pretty short episode there. Yeah, I'm not sure what all you want to know, but I'm Levi. I've been a law enforcement for about 10 years now. Grew up in a house that always, I don't know, my house is awesome as far as families. Big into Bigfoot. We actually, a few years ago, my sister and brother-in-law were working on adopting their little boy, and as a fundraiser, we made a mobile escape room out of a school bus, and it was Bigfoot themed. So, like,
no way.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I don't have any type of background like that. My name is Micah. Pretty much just raised in a wonderful Christian family. I've heard of Bigfoot and different things like that, but I'm coming from Illinois, so I never really thought anything into it. And then when I moved out here to become a cop, I met him in the police academy, and he kind of opened my eyes to the whole idea of Bigfoot out there, and that's when we started doing what we do now. So
that's awesome.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures. And I would say that, over the years when I was remodeling houses, listening to podcasts about Bigfoot, it was always the police officers or forest rangers coming on shows like this, telling their stories. Those always stuck with me because I always felt like, it's not an environment where people want to come out and talk a lot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
That's honestly, like, that's one of my, I don't say what is my biggest issue, right? Because I've talked to Levi about this multiple times, where it's just like, you go through these types of experiences, right? And you want to tell people about them, but then at the same time, you're just like, oh my God, like, people are going to look at you like you're crazy or you're insane. And especially with the kind of work we do, it's just like, people are going to look at us like that. It's like, dude, you guys are cops. You're supposed to be logical, and you can't really be into this kind of stuff. But once you experience it and you go through that kind of stuff, it's just like, Jesus, this stuff is real.
Yeah.
I think it almost lends a lot more credence too, guys. If you think about it, as Nate mentioned, a couple of Navajo Rangers that did 30 years in the res, and I think because the work itself is methodical in the sense that you guys have methodology, you investigate, you have criteria and processes for investigations. I think it just only leads credence. But I know you're saying there's like intentionally there's a stigma associated with a lot of this stuff, and I think that it's much of those that push the mainstream narrative. It's the way to discourage people from getting out of line. I feel like, honestly, it's the same thing we see in like the the UFO community and the things that people see and what's associated with that. The whole tinfoil hat, right? All these things that are meant to, even the term conspiracy theory, these ideas that were coined as much as disinformation, misinformation is totally overused and dumb now. But they do it. There is there's counter tactics to make people be quiet.
Absolutely. I think just by trying to discredit it by saying, oh, that's a conspiracy theory or that's not real. And I think I listened to your Ranger episode, but I mean, just like, I know I've heard other people say too, like if DNR says, oh, those animals aren't over here, chances are they're lying. Like, oh, there aren't any bears over here, there aren't any wolves, or it has to do with like the whole missing 411 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that is just poo-pooed and quieted down by saying, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, or oh, there's none of that over here, when in fact there's a whole other world that they're turning a blind eye to.
Yeah.
The politest stuff is wild, right? All the national park stuff, and it's just that's what I love about his work too. And this is why I think it's apples to apples for you guys, is that he's an ex-detective who went through this methodical process of narrowing it down to this hyper small sliver of cases that don't mathematically or like logically don't make a lot of sense, and then investigating those. And so, just excited about this and super cool to have you on and to tell your story.
Yeah, we just did an episode on the Wendigo. I think it was like 5 or 6 episodes ago, and tied to the missing 411. And he was talking about, people going missing in the Adirondacks and other places around the United States. And, you know, he was saying specifically it's not a Bigfoot creature, it's this Wendigo creature. So a lot of people don't know the difference between any of these creatures. So as much description as you guys can give us about kind of the, like, how you got into this and what you saw that day and how it all went down is, I'm sure everyone just wants to know all the.
Yeah. So I've known Micah since 2019, and we've talked about all kinds of different stuff. We're kind of each other's outlet. One thing that they talk about in the police academy is you have to have something other than cop work. Otherwise, it's going to drive you crazy. So we always talk to each other about stuff. Like, he'd come down, we'd go kayaking, hiking, stuff like that. But he called me one day on shift. I was working, he was working, and we got to talking about Bigfoot for who knows why we were talking about Bigfoot, but
because we're weird like that.
Yeah.
It just happens. You know?
And nothing weird about
just
that.
Talking
Yes.
about, like,
we made a whole show about it. It's like you're in the right place.
I think I made a comment that, yeah, I think he's real, and Micah kind of chimed in and was like, yeah, I think he's real too. And he's like, why don't we just, like, go find him? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And, like, I think we went out, we may have even gone out that night. If it wasn't that night, it was for sure that week. We went out for the first time. Way ill prepared, definitely not expecting to see anything. And then
it said way over prepared.
No, underprepared on that time.
Okay.
We've since corrected that.
Yeah, now we look like we're ready to deploy to Afghanistan every time we go out there.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's always been kind of interesting, you know, especially when, you know, he would bring up the whole Bigfoot thing. Because, you know, in the back of my mind, it's just like, all right, you know, is Bigfoot real? Possibly. You know, I have no evidence of it. I haven't seen any evidence of it, but I've always been the type that's just like, all right, people are talking about it. Let's go. You know, let's get out there and let's see what we can find or experience. And I've always been that way since I was little. And, you know, I've got a bunch of past experience with, like, the supernatural aspect of things. And it's kind of stemmed from that. It's just like when someone says, hey, this is, you know, this is haunted, or this is where Bigfoot is, or this is what people experience. It's just like that inner detective in me is just like, well, let's find it. Let's prove that it's real. And when we were talking that one day, and he's just like, dude, let's get out there. You know, let's try to see if we can catch something or experience it. And it's just, okay, you know, you've now piqued my interest, and we're going to either prove that Bigfoot is 100% with us, or we're going to prove that he's not. So that's what kind of started our whole investigation of Bigfoot and other cryptids.
Yeah. So the first place that we went was actually, we had a little bit of intel on it. So in southern Indiana, there's an area that's pretty well known for, like, a lot of Bigfoot encounters. It's kind of like Morgan County, Monroe County area. So about an hour south of Indianapolis, kind of known for a lot of different Bigfoot sightings. And we actually, whenever we were at the Morgan County Fair one year when we had the escape room Bigfoot bus, and there was a group from a local, like, Bigfoot hunting crew came over, and we're like, hey, yeah, Bigfoot's for sure real, and started showing my mom, like, they pulled up their phone and started showing her pictures of all these. I wish my mom would have gotten screenshots of these, and she's kicking herself for not getting them. But showing her pictures of, like, oh yeah, here's Bigfoot crossing the road, and here's Bigfoot bending down by the river over here and getting a drink, like, several pictures. So my dad ended up talking to a couple guys from that group and asked them if they had done any knocking or yelling and stuff. Like, oh no, we're not crazy. Like, we're not going to mess with anything like that. So, like, we looked at, like, was it BFRO to see if there was a couple sightings in that area, found a couple, and went out that night. And Micah doesn't get off until 10:30 or so, 10:30. So he doesn't get down to my place till after 11. So, like, we're hitting the woods at midnight. We walk out there, headlamps, and we end up walking down this old, fire service road, and then finding this top of a hill that was cleared that had just prairie grass, like 8-foot tall prairie grass. We're walking in, and it's something like you're expecting Velociraptor to jump out like Jurassic Park. Like, it's crazy. And we walk out there that first time and kind of didn't really know what we were doing at this point. So we just kind of squatted down, and I smelled like what smelled like the inside of a pumpkin, which sounds really random. And I'd asked Micah if he smelled it. He's like, no, of course I don't. Like, he just had COVID. He's like, I don't smell anything.
Yeah.
So I turn on my headlamp and I start looking down and around me. And I see, this is one of my favorite stories to tell. There is a legitimate turd. Like, I'm talking the size of like 3 times the size of like a Texas Roadhouse baked potato, like massive. And I'm sitting almost right on top of it. And I start looking at it. I'm like, nothing. So I grew up in the woods. Like, I grew up in the woods around this area. Like, there's nothing that makes a turd like this. Maybe a hog, but like, we don't have wild hogs around here. Like, there's nothing that makes like poop like this. So I started tearing it open with a stick, as you do, and it's full of persimmon seeds, like 30 persimmon seeds. And I'm like, the only thing that could make a turd like this, like I said, is a hog, which we don't have, or a hiker. And that'd be
kind of weird.
It'd be kind of weird for a hiker to take a dump in the middle of the woods like that. And also, too, if I eat 30 persimmons, I could poop through a screen door. There's no way I'd leave like an actual turd there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I wish I would have gotten pictures of it, but like I said, we weren't expecting to see anything that night. And then as we were walking out the very first time, we could hear something walking behind us, kind of paralleling us.
Yes.
As we're walking out. It's like we would walk and then stop, and you would hear trailing behind us maybe 20, 30 yards, kind of behind us and to the side, something walking.
And it sounded heavy. Like you can hear the steps. It didn't sound like it was some, like a deer or some other wild animal. Like, this thing sounded like it had some weight to it.
Yeah.
And it was intelligent, because every time we would stop, it would stop. Every time we'd start walking again, it would start walking. So that kind of, I guess you could say, kind of freaked us out a little bit.
Yeah. I actually went back a couple days later with my dog during the day, and he went wild over that area where we felt like we were being, or heard that thing following us. My dog went wild, started tracking up and along the trail that we were at. Never found any prints or anything, but it was late November last year. But yeah, that was the first time that we went out. So then we were hooked. Like, we actually saw something that was kind of weird and had something follow us out. So then we've been going at least once a month since.
So yeah, it's rare. I mean, obviously a lot of times people go out for a long, years and never have any sort of experience like that. So you still have Bigfoot poop. Reminds me of my days working at a summer camp. Cleaning the women's bathrooms. I saw a few of those.
Yeah. 3 baked potatoes. They're stuck together.
Oh my God.
Dude, all I can think of is Ken Walker. We interviewed this guy, Ken Walker, who had a doc called Big Fur. He's a taxidermist who decided to make a Bigfoot. He's world famous. He actually won the lottery like randomly, like a last year or something. But he claimed to have Bigfoot turds in his freezer.
I would love to.
Right.
Do
you
remember that? Love to see.
That's
like,
right.
If he could send like a picture of that, because I would love to see if it was like the one I saw.
Oh, he will. You can find him on Facebook. He'll get back to you.
What's his name? Ken Walker.
Out there. Ken Walker.
Ken Walker.
Yeah. He's got a documentary called Big Fur.
Big Fur. Yeah, he's a fascinating dude.
Canadian gentleman.
Okay,
that's just
cool guy. Came on, really nice dude. Yeah, really into Bigfoot, and yeah, we had a lot of fun with him on our show. But he was talking about that, and that's not the first time I've heard that either. So
did you bag and tag that turd? You got that? Like
I wish. I really wish I would have. I went to church.
Put a size on it. I mean, come on.
Give us some kind of scale here. Is it like
a foot and a half? What are we talking?
So I would
2 subways.
I would say it was at least a foot long, and girth wise, I'm talking 4 inches.
Oh man,
yeah.
That's nasty. That's what that is.
Yeah. That's not coming out of
no. Like I said, it was either a hog or.
If it is, man, if it is, that person, he probably would have found him there. So.
Yeah.
Persimmons. So Bigfoot's out there eating persimmons, huh?
Yeah, I had actually asked there's a guy at my church that's been hunting forever, and I'm like, hey, do you know what would do this? And he's like, I was explaining it to him, and he's like, I have like nothing around here does.
Wow. Gosh. That's the weird thing about Bigfoot is it's like, not only is it like this weird paranormal creature, but it's just out there squatting in the bushes, taking a dump like every other animal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think he probably just leaves his dukes in this dimension.
I think so. So funny you mention it. So we were talking the whole time, like every time that we would go out, we would be like, is Bigfoot paranormal? Is Bigfoot something that can jump between dimensions?
Yeah.
We would always ask that question. And then once we get into the Wendigo story, I can say with confidence that I think Bigfoot is just an animal. And I think Wendigo is something completely different.
Completely different, 100% demonic.
Interesting.
Yeah, let's tell us about this. I mean, we've talked about it in general. Wendigo sounds more in like the Skinwalker realm.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think
the Wendigo and the Skinwalker are pretty much the same thing in terms of like entity in a way, but because they both come from Native American lore, right? You got the Wendigo that's created from, cannibalism, and then you've got the skinwalker that is apparently, associated with witch doctors and stuff like that. I think they're both, in a sense, kind of similar.
Yeah, I think there's something there, right? There's like rituals. There's rituals, whether it be cannibalistic rituals or, dark arts, kind of satanic, demonic rituals. That we know that from we've done a bit on skinwalkers, both with the guys from the Rangers with John Dover, and who was on Unsolved Mysteries. Basically, there's an episode on the new Unsolved Mysteries, if you haven't seen it, where it's essentially our episode just done out in film. Regardless, there's some weird stuff that happens, like where there's the use of parts of animals for shape-shifting, and then also there's some weird. I'll let you go on. The Wendigo stuff is fascinating because it's
oh
yes.
God, yeah,
definitely weird. I guess. I mean, do you want to jump into the Wendigo?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
tell us what happened. Break it down.
That thing is the first time I've ever been as scared as I was, because when we experienced this, I legitimately thought that we were going to die. Like there was no moment where it's just like, all right, cool, we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna make it home tonight. I legitimately thought we were gonna die.
Huh.
Yeah. So, like I said, we've been going out for a little over a year, at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on how our schedules work. We'll go out Bigfoot, and that's literally what we look for.
Levi, it's the same area. Like you guys could basically go into the same sort of
actually,
areas. Or you guys checking out new places?
No, we cover a pretty big area. So we'll hop in my Jeep and just drive for a couple hours south, or like we hit a lot of southern Indiana, like northern Kentucky. Like we'll pretty big area that we'll spread through. Now we have found, like, we've hit a few spots multiple times, and we don't always have encounters. Obviously, like we go out there and sometimes the wood's just dead, and all you'll see is possum and deer, stuff like that. Yeah, so we'll hit several different spots. Like we've had lots of different encounters with what we believe to be Bigfoot. So we actually started talking. We're like, we're going out into the woods. After a few encounters that we had, we started preparing a little bit more. So like we're loaded down. Like we're definitely prepared in case something were to attack us. And we're like, we should probably come up with like a name or something. So if we get stopped by like a park ranger, we can be like, no, we're looking for cryptids. We're not poachers. So
yeah, we're not out there trying to shoot and kill every living creature that's in the woods.
Yeah. We have no intentions on shooting Bigfoot, but if he tries to tear me up, I'm gonna have something to say about it. So we decided on the name American Cryptid Research Group. So
yeah,
we got a logo and everything, so that way we're somewhat a little bit more legitimate if somebody were to question why we're doing what we're doing.
The ACRG.
Yeah, ACRG.
Do you guys have merch? Can we do a merch swap? We want to do that.
I would love to send you guys some stuff. I actually ordered some stickers. We're going to do some shirts and stuff. Yep. It's all going to fun. We're wanting to do it.
We're going to send you shirts. We'll send you shirts anyway. But if you do end up getting some, we'll rep the American Cryptid Research Group charter member. I want to say charter member.
Oh, that's awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So the Wendigo. All right. So that night, because I know you were working. Was I working? I think I was off.
No, we were both working. So I had just finished my long week. So we work rotating shifts, working law enforcement. I had worked over 70 hours this week. I had to pick up extra training days. So I was wiped. I get up, I work day shift. I get up at 4 a.m. Micah works mid shift. So he works until 10 o'clock at night. He called me while I was at work and was like, "Hey dude, you want to go squatching tonight?" I'm like, "No, not at all. I do not want to stay up. Like I'm the end of a 70+ hour work week. I'm going to be up till 4 a.m. Like, no." So then I felt bad. I'm driving around at work. Like I said, this is kind of our outlet, our non-cop thing that we do to kind of de-stress. And I could tell he was disappointed when I told him no. So I called him back. I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So he ended up coming down to my place. So I got off work. He came down to my place at around 11 o'clock, and it was storming that night.
Like, I felt like it was God reaching out to us saying, "Hey, you probably shouldn't do this tonight."
Yeah, maybe.
Because when the weather was horrible, you got storms, it's pouring out, like you could barely see in front of us as we're driving down the road. Like it was every sign that we shouldn't be going out doing this.
There were tornado watches over the area that we were going.
Tornado, flooding, like it was everything.
Yeah. So, it was a terrible night to go squatching. But he's like, I don't even care if we just like drive around in the woods.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, that's fine. So we hop in my Jeep and like wipers on, full blast. We drive a couple hours south of me, and we're only on gravel at this point. So like we drive a couple hours south, we hit gravel, and we drive about a half hour or so to a spot that we've been to before. There's a big fire tower there. And like it's raining so hard it's almost washing the gravel out in front of us in these turns. Like it's bad. We probably shouldn't have gone, but it was starting to let up a little bit. And we get to the fire tower, and I turn the Jeep off, turn the lights off, and it was so dark that I know everybody says this, but literally I tested it. You put your hand in front of your face, you can't see it until the lightning would flash, and then like it would silhouette like the pine trees and stuff. Mm. So then he said, "We're going to climb to the top of that tower." And the lightning has changed from bolts to just flashes in the distance. So I was like, well, I don't feel like we're going to get shocked. And I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, we'll climb to the top of it.
That was our man up moment.
Yeah.
So we get to
your Ben Franklin
moment.
Yeah,
exactly. It probably could have been.
You want to see if electricity's real?
Yeah, so we get to the top of this thing, and we could see another storm blowing in, like in the distance, like probably 30 miles out. We could see it. And we're like, we should probably get down because there's probably bolts of lightning with this one. So we climbed back down, and that tower was slicker than deer guts on a doorknob. It was gnarly coming down. But get down to the bottom, and I'm getting in the Jeep, and Micah shines his light over towards the road, and there's like a reflector, about probably a 3-foot tall reflector or so, and he sees something break the light beam between like him and the reflector.
It looked like somebody walked directly in front of it. Like you could almost see that stride. So.
Yeah. I didn't see it. We could hear some stuff, but I could easily dismiss that as wind through the pine trees or something, kind of like the wispy sound. So we load up in the Jeep, keep driving, drive like a little over an hour deeper into the woods. And we're just literally doing like rock, paper, scissors on which way to turn, like left, right. Like I'd been back there a bunch. Like I was pretty comfortable knowing where I was at. Like I didn't think we were going to get lost. Like we don't have any cell reception down here, but I felt confident enough. I had a full tank of gas, so we're good. And we actually ended up, probably shouldn't say this, but we actually ended up turning down this one road, and we drive a couple 100 yards on it, and like branches started scraping like both sides of the Jeep. Turns out we were on a hiking trail. So I had to back out of that one and keep on going. And still super dark, rainy, but this is in August of this year, and the trees were obviously super green. Yeah. So it kind of, we were so deep in the woods that it kind of cut down on how much it was raining on us. So we see a parking lot kind of come up in the gravel. So, hey, pull in there, lightning flashes, silhouettes a bunch of tombstones because it was a graveyard. I'm like, nope, don't want any part of this. Turn back around. Kept on going. We ended up going, I don't know, probably another 15 minutes or so. Yeah. And we see this spot off on the right where it was a primitive campsite. And when I say campsite, this isn't like you pull your camper in there. This is like somebody's driven off the road and flattened it down so it looks like a campsite now. Yeah. So he's like, hey, go back in there and park, and we'll hop out. We'll see, like we'll do some knocking and calling, and we'll see if we'll hear anything. Something that we've done before. So I back up, pull in there. So you pull into the campsite. It's almost like a cul-de-sac. So I kind of pulled back around facing the road, and we hop out, and the rain had let off quite a bit at this point. So we're able to stand outside and not get soaked. So, but as soon as we get out of the Jeep and we start standing next to it, I could hear what sounded like either a TV or a radio playing in the woods.
I heard whispers. Yes. That's what I heard. And it couldn't identify what it was, but it legitimately sounded like somebody was talking, not too far from me, at least maybe 15 to 20 feet from where we were standing.
Like so much so that we would shine our lights in the woods looking for something or someone there. But every time we turn our lights on, it would stop. But literally every time we would turn it back off, we would hear it again. Yeah. So much so that we're walking into the woods at this point and we're not seeing anything. Well, then we realized like, we're kind of far away from the Jeep. We should probably go back.
I kind of felt like at that point we started to think more tactically, like, okay, let's stick together. Let's, back to back, clearly it seems like something is there. Don't know what it is, but it seems like something's almost like leading you away from the safety of your vehicle. So every time we'd hear the whisper, we'd realize, wait, no, now we're following it. Like we need to backtrack. You know, let's not give into this. And once we got back to where the Jeep was, we kind of went back to back, and everything would start all over again. You'd hear the whispers. They kind of grew into footsteps. Now it sounded like something was walking around us.
Yeah, so we would take turns. We were standing back to back, and Micah was facing the road, and I was facing deeper into the woods. And Micah saw something move from tree to tree whenever he had his light on. He said it was gray.
Yeah.
He saw a couple feet of it, and he saw it move from tree to tree. And I'm like,
it was almost like the shoulder of a person in a way. Like, you know, I'm walking past this tree or behind this tree, and you only got a glimpse of, you know, my arm or my shoulder on down. That's what I saw. And, you know, when you see something like that, you're just like, all right, my eyes are playing tricks on me. There's no way I saw that.
He has an infrared laser and also a visible green laser on the end of his rifle. So I had him paint with his green laser. I'm like, hey, show me on the tree where you saw it. So he held it where he saw, and I walked over to it, and I'm like, holy crap, this is 8 foot off the ground. Like, whatever you saw a couple feet of something move, and it was 8 foot off the ground. So I go back to the Jeep, and then I'm looking deeper into the woods, and I see something move from tree to tree. So I had the same thing. I had him point his laser, and I told him where to point it, and I walked over, and it was 7 foot, 8 foot off the ground again. Because I can reach up 8 foot, and I put my hand up, and I'm like, well, that's 8 foot off the ground. At this point, we're probably 30, 40 yards into the woods away from the Jeep.
Yeah.
And as we're looking into the woods deeper with our lights, we could see, I don't know, we kept on seeing glimpses of stuff that had us curious, and we would walk further and further away until we finally realized, like, we're over probably close to 100 yards away from the Jeep in woods that I don't know. Like I said, I grew up in the woods. I'm comfortable in the woods, but I do not know these woods, and they're huge. Like, it's a little over 400,000 acres, I think, the woods that we're in right now. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable enough to, like, I don't have a compass on me. Like, no, let's go back to the Jeep. So then we're really tactically minded at this point, because we're a little creeped out too. We're standing back to back, kind of doing a little 360 security. Go back to the Jeep. We kind of use it to block one side of us. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of took turns looking at the road, one looking in the woods, using the Jeep to back us. Once again, it was Micah's turn looking at the road. I'm looking in the woods. We've been doing this for like a half hour at this point. And I heard Micah walk to the other side of the Jeep. And it's dark. Like, it's really, really dark. So I heard him walk to the other side of the Jeep. But then I felt...
I didn't realize that. You know, at that point when he, I guess, heard me walk around the other side of the Jeep, I heard something too. And at that moment, I'm like right next to him. And I just kind of like lean over and like almost like whisper to him, like, hey, did you hear that?
Yeah. Whenever he does that, he bumps into me and whispers, did you hear that? I spin around. I'm like, that wasn't you? He's like, no. So he starts to run around to the other side of the Jeep where we heard the sound. Then I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, it's wet out. Slow down. We'll shine our lights. Whatever was there should have left tracks because it's soft. So we start going around the front of the Jeep in an area that we hadn't walked yet. We'd only walked behind the Jeep at this point. And in the middle of one of my tire tracks, there's a footprint facing where we were standing. And the footprint was the size of, I wear a size 12 boot, and it was the size of my boot, but it had a longer, pointier toe. And it was facing us. And it was in the middle of one of our tire tracks.
It was almost as if it was like just standing there.
Yeah.
Just like watching what we were doing.
To give you like a profile of the shoe, I would say like what you would imagine like a knight's boot, like a knight's armor boot would look like. Kind of has that pointy toe on it. Mm-hmm. At this point,
like a hoof. Almost sounds like a hoof.
Yes. Yeah. Almost kind of hoof like. So.
Or if you're like a hipster wearing those pointy boots.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. No hipsters. So.
Now I want to ask though, like, because you guys are out squatching, right? What is your first thought there? I mean, obviously you guys concluded at the end of this, we know that it was a Wendigo encounter, but when you're hearing whispering and you didn't mention that sounds like the radio, I start thinking about, what I think automatically is like the Blair Witch Project, which I remember watching that when I was maybe just in college, or I don't know what year it came out. I went camping right after, like an idiot. We hear about stuff like that where you hear like talking or sounds like children. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is Bigfoot associated. I understand that. So are you guys thinking this whole time that you're kind of getting circled by a Bigfoot, or do you know that it's something else?
So Micah actually, right whenever we found that track, Micah leans over to me and says, I know you don't want to hear it. And I did not want to hear it because I knew what he was going to say. But he says, I'm getting an overwhelming sense of something evil. And I think now would be a good time for Micah to kind of give a little bit of background.
Backtrack. When I was younger, I got into the whole supernatural type of stuff, right? You know, growing up in church and hearing like Bible stories of different things, you know, kind of piqued my interest in some. So in my youth group, you know, some of my buddies were just like, hey, ghosts and demons, haunted places, like let's try to investigate this kind of stuff. So at the age of like 14 or 15, I found myself going to some very demonic locations, I guess you could say, and you know, dealing with a lot of ghost stuff, and that kind of turned into like, hey, this isn't actually a ghost, like this is a legit demonic encounter. And I found myself getting kind of like deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole for that, to where it started to like actually affect my life and, you know, my attitude, things I saw, you know, almost on a daily basis. I'd find myself dealing with some type of demonic entity. So remembering my past experiences with that and what that actually felt like, I started to feel it when we were out, you know, Bigfoot hunting. You know, the atmosphere changed from this, you know, okay, there's something out here, to this overwhelming feeling of just like dread and death and evil. And like, I'm standing there like next to Levi thinking to myself like, okay, this is no longer, you know, safe. This is no longer, like, Bigfoot's not here. Like 100%, I can say that now. Bigfoot is not here, but what is 1,000 times worse. And it got to the point where I almost started yelling at Levi, like, we need to leave. Like, we need to get out of here right now. It is evil. It is demonic, and it's close.
Hindsight, I should have left.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So he tells me, he's like, I'm getting like an overwhelming sense of something evil here. And I'm like, oh, like, no, you're just trying to freak me out. Now, I grew up in church. I got saved at a young age. Something that kind of, I think, sets me a little bit different is my dad's a pastor, and he is very open about like what the Bible has to say about demons, fallen angels. You guys would love to have him on talking about eschatology and stuff. Like, I think he would be an excellent guest to have. I think one thing, I remember a book that we read growing up was called Chaluba's Hands. And it was about this little boy in a village that was carving idols. And then he goes, well, I'm making these gods. Then somebody had to have made me. So growing up, my parents weren't afraid to say that there were other powers out there. Obviously, God is greater and stronger, but they weren't afraid to let me know, like, yeah, there's other evil entities out there. So that kind of piqued my curiosity. I didn't go with the same rabbit hole that Micah did as far as ghost hunting and stuff like that, but I did start studying Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch and like all that kind of stuff. Like, I would love to talk to you guys about that too. I think that'd be awesome. But yeah, so I definitely know that there are evil things out there, and I believe Micah, and I believe that he did sense something, but I think I was just trying to justify it to myself. So I said, no, like, let's just calm down. You're freaking yourself out. You're trying, like, it's freaking me out. I think we're good. We'll go back to the other side of the Jeep, and we'll keep doing the same thing. I shouldn't have done that, because it wasn't much longer into that. We started seeing white flashes of light. The lightning had stopped at this point, and we were seeing rectangular orbs. I don't know. I guess orbs. I think of circles when I think of orbs. We're seeing these rectangular flashes, maybe the size of like a big TV remote or a little bit bigger than that. And they were flashing in the wood line, not in the opening like where lightning would get, or not like a cell phone tower pole or anything like that, because they weren't there before, and they would flash. And every time they would flash, shortly after that, we would hear footsteps. I didn't know what to think of it at the time. It definitely distracted us, because we would be like, hey, did you see that flash? Yeah. And then we would hear something move, and then we'd see the flash, and then hear something move again. But it was just a few minutes after Micah told me that he sensed something evil, I just get overcome with this feeling of dread that something just dark and evil was around. Like, my whole body got covered in goosebumps. I just kind of got like this sick feeling in my stomach, like I'm somewhere where I should not be. Like, what part does light have with darkness? It's kind of that same feeling. So I actually prayed out loud, and I said, God, keep us safe. And as soon as I finished that prayer, I prayed it out loud. As soon as I finished it, I hear this maniacal laugh in the direction that we saw the flash out at the road. It sounded like William Dafoe from the first Spider-Man. Whenever he's playing the Green Goblin, it sounded legitimately like that laugh. I spin around faster than I ever have. I'm like, did you hear that? He goes, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. So we hop in the Jeep. Thankfully, it starts right up. Start driving out towards the road. And the whole time, Mike was like, drive, drive, drive. Like he's
like, I'm yelling it.
Yeah, he's yelling and cussing at me, telling me to get out of there. So I pull up to the road, and I got my high beams on. I got floodlights in the front. And I pull up to the road. And for some reason, I look to the left, the direction that we came from. It wasn't like I was trying to clear traffic. I just looked to the left. And standing 30 yards away on the gravel road, which was all lit up at this point from my lights, kind of reflecting off the canopy of the trees, there's this 8-foot tall, gray, humanoid looking thing. So it had goat legs, really tight gray skin, really long bony arms. Its head, like its shoulder was kind of hunched up next to its head, and then its jaw, I guess the best way I can describe it was like the villain Venom, how its jaw kind of hinges really far back. So its jaw was hinged down, and it kind of turns over and looks at me. And it has dark black sunk-in eyes. You could see like a little white floating in, like where the eyeballs are. And it looks at us, and I just get overwhelmed. I'm like, whatever this thing is wants to kill me. Like there was no doubt in my mind. Whatever's standing right there wants to kill me. So I freak out. I go, dude, we're over there. There's something. He goes, I know, drive. So I hammer down. I've never been over 15 miles an hour on these gravel roads because they're gravel roads. I was doing 50. Like I just hammer.
The entire time he's speeding out of there, I am trying to maneuver myself because at this point I've already accepted that we're going to die. And the only thing going through my mind is like, I'm going to try to kill it. You know, it's either I succeed, we kill it, we're safe, or they're going to find our bodies tomorrow morning in a pile of brass. So windows down, I am maneuvering myself to point my rifle out the window because I'm trying to track it. I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to shoot it. As I turn to get to where the window is, it is alongside the Jeep. Its head is near the center pillar, chasing at us. I could not get my rifle out there because I'm freaking out. This thing is right there running alongside us. I'm at this point almost now sitting in the center console or on Levi's lap because I can't properly position myself.
I thought he was trying to sit on my lap, honestly. Like we're driving out of there. Tears are in his eyes. I'm screaming, just trying to drive. I've never been this freaked out in my life. Like, I'm a grown man. Like I'm 32 years old. I'm a police officer for like the last 10 years. I've never been this scared in my life. I'm flying. And we didn't stop driving like a rally car until we hit pavement.
We ended up, I think, at like a McDonald's parking lot, just like, hey, dude, this just happened.
It didn't.
We need to talk about this. You know,
it didn't stop feeling dark and oppressive until we hit probably a half hour on pavement. So we were a good 15, 20 minutes the way we were driving from pavement.
How long is it chasing you in the car? Like how long are you seeing it keep up with you, and how fast?
Distance-wise, I'd say maybe 200 yards. Yep.
Okay, so it's pacing. It's pacing.
Yeah,
with you
it paced with us probably up to 40 miles an hour. It goes from being 30 yards behind us. I turn. It runs up along the passenger side of my Jeep. There are two turns pretty close together. That first turn, I feel like it was right there, and then we started to lose it on the second one. But it still felt dark and oppressive until probably a half hour until we were on pavement.
You know, I can say that, you know, as manly as I am, or as manly as I'd like to pretend I am, right? Like I legit started to cry because when you feel like death start to like embrace you in a way, because that's how it felt to me. Like I was done. Like I broke down. I was like, this is it. We're done.
Yeah.
Like I legitimately cried.
Yeah. I don't feel like I did a good enough job explaining how scared we were, but literally from the time that we were trying to get in the Jeep, which we couldn't get in fast enough, I have a lifted YJ, we're trying to get in it and we're pulling out. It literally felt like I've never had this intensive a feeling where something here wants me dead.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we hit the pavement and I'm like, what was that? Because I had no idea. I'm like, I don't know what this was. So I start describing it. And Michael's like, I know, I saw it. And he's like, you just like, it's a Wendigo. Yeah. I'm like, a what? He goes, it's a Wendigo. I'm like, I'd never even heard of a Wendigo at this point. Like I consider myself pretty hip on a lot of cryptids, but I had never heard of a Wendigo before. Yeah. So Michael's like, dude, I need a cheeseburger. So we get back to the closest city, which is about 2 hours away. And we drive through a McDonald's drive-through because it's literally the only thing open. And the dude that hands us our food, you can tell is completely stoned out of his mind. He leans over, like he sees my Jeep. He's like, "You guys been mudding? Like, just give us some food." Then we pulled in an empty mall parking lot, and we sat there. And he's like, "You got to check the side of your Jeep for scratches because I bet this thing like ran its hand up along the side or something." But like I said, we drove 2 hours through the mud, like gravel and mud and everything else like that, trying to get back. I didn't see anything immediately until we get around to the back of it. And I have a vinyl tire cover, and in the middle of my vinyl tire cover, there are 3 new holes that weren't there before. So I'm not sure if those were claws or what, but
it's a wild story, gentlemen. It's pretty terrifying. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm thinking of, but I am thinking of this one video probably like 6 or 8 weeks ago, somewhere in there. People were sending us this video, and normally we get, it's always interesting when like 10 people send you the same video. You're always like, okay, something about this. It was a couple that rented a Airbnb in the middle of nowhere, and at night he goes out. You can see that it's like in snow or something, and he's shining the flashlight on the tree line, and it sounds like younger women calling for help.
Really?
And it went viral on TikTok or something, but it sounded like these, they're like, we're in the middle of nowhere, and it sounds like someone's calling us from the tree line. It sounds like they're in distress. And I wonder if this is how a lot of people go missing. Kind of what you said earlier is that these things will sort of get your attention and sound like they're some person trapped in, like broke their leg in the woods, and you're going in there to investigate it, and it's just drawing you in. Very much like other cryptid creatures that, historically speaking, that supposedly could sing really well and lure people in or whatever it is. It's like they sort of attract you to them.
Yeah.
And then they sort of paralyze you, I think, with that infrasound. They have some sort of vibration or thing, and they can instantly paralyze you in fear, and then you're done. They have you. Yeah. And I've heard Bigfoot keeping up with truckers, right? So Bigfoot will be running alongside truckers, and they're looking out the window, and it's like, or they jump over the road. I mean, these things are superhuman in terms of their athletic abilities, but that's just a lot of thoughts off the top of my head. It seems to fall in line with other cryptid stories, but it sounds a little bit like a rake too. We did an episode on the rake. They kind of have this emaciated, bony.
Yes, constantly hungry, can never.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's the weird part. But it also sounds like you're describing like weird animal parts. Like it's sort of like an amalgamation of all types of different animals kind of stuck together, like Mr. Potato Head or something, just a bunch of random stuff stuck to it.
It was weird. Yeah, it was weird seeing the goat legs. I'm like, is this like a...
Yeah.
I don't. It was the weirdest thing.
Do you think the same creature made the footprint you saw on the tire track?
I think it would have had to have been. Yeah, I think it had to have been.
So it was right there. It was basically right on you guys.
Yeah. It went from being 30 yards behind us to catching up to us in no time. The acceleration is just incredible.
So you get in your Jeep. Did you turn around and then go back out? Was it behind the Jeep, or how does that was the only part of the story I was a little unclear of, like the moment before it happened?
Yeah, so we're already facing the road at this point. So we tee into the road. It's to the left. We turn right. So then it runs up behind us that way. Does that help?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it sounded like it was trying to lure you away from the Jeep? Is that what you felt like?
Yes.
In hindsight.
That's what it really seemed like, especially with, as we'd get deeper and deeper into the woods, we'd start hearing, like for me personally, I'd hear, footsteps running around to my left, he'd hear something on the right. So it was almost like it was trying to split us up and get us, separated. So
yeah, I think
that was wild.
Hindsight, definitely. I think it was trying to either separate us or lure us further away, like deeper into the woods. Honestly,
you guys are being hunted.
Oh, 100%.
It felt like it. Yeah,
it gives me this gave me the willies a few times just listening to it, because like it is, Michael. Like we were talking about when you growing up and like doing doing the ghost hunting, and I had some of that kind of stuff too. More so in college, because I grew up in a church as well, and was always fascinated by that. So we try to like go places we heard were haunted in my little hometown, Northern California. And I got in some weird situations where I know that feeling you're talking about, where I stopped doing it because I had a couple experiences that were like, whoa, this is way more than like fun and games. Like we've crossed the Rubicon here, and this is something completely
I had to stop doing it because it started to affect, my home life with my family. There was one night, I get home from work, I jump in bed, whatever, and my daughter, maybe she's like 1 year old, maybe 2, and we'd have her crib kind of pushed up next to our bed. So I'm laying in bed. My wife is, passed out asleep. My daughter's asleep in her bed, and I'm kind of just laying there because I don't sleep well. Windows open, moonlight's in, so you could see everything. And I kind of I hear this noise come from my daughter's crib. So I look over and I kind of see her standing in the crib, holding onto the rail. And I'm just like, okay, hey, trying to talk to her softly. Like, oh, it's time to go to sleep, and I at this point, I kind of look at her and I look up and down her body, right? So I go from the head all the way down to her feet. And once I got down to her feet, I noticed that my daughter was actually still sleeping in the bed, laying there. And now there's this entity that is looking identical to her, just standing there staring at me in the crib. And then it was like you could see the body, you could see her, and then like the darkness behind it. And this thing got sucked back into the darkness that was behind the crib. So once I saw that, I kind of realized, like, okay, the stupid things that I'm doing, like I need to stop, because now it's legitimately coming home with me.
We're bringing stuff home. Yeah.
Yeah, we get those videos too. We get like a lot of times. I think we've had several of these. They'll catch them on the little, the baby cam. The baby's sleeping, and then they'll see something and we've gotten several of those links. It's crazy. I mean, take me back to the moment though when you guys are driving out of there. It's interesting because it reminds me of another story too. Of like, there was a story I heard years ago about this guy who lived in a cabin in the woods, and something from the forest would call its dog's name. So he would go out at night and try to get his dog to come back, and this cryptid creature, could have been Bigfoot, was mimicking him, calling his dog. So he would hear himself call, and it's like, is he trying to call his dog out there, or is he, trying to get his dog to go out there so he'll go look for his dog? And then
we had that conversation too, when we were kind of doing our little powwow after this incident and kind of going over, hey, what is a Wendigo? What are the stories behind the Wendigo? And when you research stuff like that, you got hikers that'll go out in the woods, and you'll start hearing stories of, them hearing something calling their name. Right.
Exactly.
And what I was telling Levi is like, all right, well, I think the reason we didn't hear something call our names is because not one time did we speak really about, like, we didn't say our names or anything like that. We kept close. We whispered, so it's almost like it wasn't able to use that against us. So now that's why we're only hearing the whispering. If it knew our names, or if at one point in time we said, hey, Levi, hey, Micah, whatever, now it knows who we are, I feel like maybe that point we would start hearing something calling us.
Yeah, because you got to put yourself in the shoes of the people that go missing in the missing 411 cases. It's often like they'll leave things like a trail of stuff, and you wonder if they're initially just sitting there hunting or whatever, and then they start hearing someone call them. They're by themselves, and they're hearing something is luring them away from wherever they're at. And I think that's, in my thoughts, it's just that's like the precursor. It's like they get curious about something, they're out of their zone, they're moving away from wherever they are, and then boom, they're just like they're being baited in. But I just fascinated. Like when you're looking at this thing, keeping up, are you seeing its eyes? Are you seeing it running? Is it in a full sprint? Is it working heavy? Or is it just easy, just like a jaunt? It's just keeping up with you.
Honestly,
I know it's dark outside.
I couldn't tell how can I say this? Like how much effort it was putting into trying to catch us. You know, when I'm trying to get my rifle out the window to shoot this thing, and I see the head and I see it there, it almost had this sense like, you know, it's trying to get us. You know, it's legitimately, you know, running as fast as it can, and like at one point, like I thought like it was going to try to reach in, like pull me out the window. You know, because you know once you start seeing something like that and you're in that kind of situation, your mind starts to like just go. You know, you're just like, all right, how is it going to get me? How is it going to kill me right now?
No.
You know, but that's kind of the sense I got. Like as I'm looking at it out the window, it's just like this thing it's trying to get us. It's right here.
Yeah.
You get any shots off?
No, I couldn't. It was horrible because it was just like I hit the metal post of the window and it's like right past it, you know. And I felt like if I try to reach out to kind of like turn towards it, like, it's gonna grab my rifle. It's gonna grab me. Like,
yeah. When I saw it, I saw the whole body. Like it was, like I said, 30-ish yards in the middle of the road. It was facing into the woods, the direction where we were. And it was kind of looking over its left shoulder at me because I'm getting like a side profile of it. So I see its long bony arms, its legs, its mouth, which was open, and its eyes. And then, so I'm staring at it, and that's when Micah was like, get out of here. As I'm like, dude, do you see that? He's like, yeah, go. So then the only other time I saw it was, I don't know, by the time I hit fourth gear, I look over into my rear passenger. It's a Jeep, so it doesn't have a backseat. But I'm looking out that rear window, and I see what looks like head and shoulder, kind of like top torso, right where Mike is aiming. Like it was literally there at my quarter panel.
Yeah.
Dang.
Have you got
and the 3 holes in the back of your Jeep? It reminds me of a story. I interviewed a guy years ago, and he was in rural Kentucky. We put out on a members episode actually, and he was in rural Kentucky. He was burning his trash one night, and he lights a match, and he scares whatever's down by this burn barrel. I think he was eating out of the garbage can or something because they, you know, in rural places they burn their garbage, right? So it freaks him out. He runs back to his cabin, and when he gets in, he tells his wife about this, and sure enough, she's like, whatever, you're just joking. He turns around to close the door, and he's got 3 slashes in the back of his shirt. So something swiped at him.
Really?
And tore 3 like perfect slashes in the back of his shirt. And this was like a listener's dad. He came on the show and told this whole story, and it didn't sound like Bigfoot. I remember thinking like that sounds like something more sinister.
Yes.
In fact, you have 3 tears in the back of your leather cover of your tire.
I've always associated that with like demonic activity. You know, like the 3 cuts or the 3 slashes has always been something
people get
demonic.
scratches that were like a poltergeist kind of a situation.
Yeah. I think that
because Bigfoot has like just like a for what you can tell, it just looks like, you know, big primate hand. It doesn't have
and
claws.
Doesn't T-Rex have just like 2?
I think so, like 2 and a
probably
thumb.
wasn't a T-Rex.
Velociraptor, just 1.
An opposable thumb. The Raptors do. They can open doorknobs.
I watched that movie.
Okay,
Jurassic Park, first one. That's the one that matters.
Yeah.
Well, you had your own T-Rex experience. You know, you're in the Jeep and it's chasing after you. It's very Jurassic Park.
It's chaos theory, right?
Honestly, it messed with us for a little bit after that. Like, we kind of wrestled with it for a while. Not the fact that, like, I feel like my faith is strong enough. Like, I can easily, like, I'm not, I guess because my parents weren't afraid to tell me that there are other entities out there that are evil. It didn't, I wasn't questioning my faith about it, like, wondering what this was. I was more kind of, I didn't want to tempt it. Like, I didn't want to go out in the woods and be like, because the Bible says not to tempt these things. And I didn't want to go out to the woods tempting it and having conversations with my dad about it. Like, I wasn't. Like, we were out there looking for Bigfoot, and honestly, I didn't think we were going to find anything that night anyway. It was too dramatic of a weather day, like rain, storm, everything else like that. I wasn't out there.
Well, that's very missing 411, by the way. there's always a weather event before someone goes missing.
You guys were almost. You almost were politest.
Yeah.
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 I wouldn't. Yeah. There's something about the weather. There's always some sort of weather issue whenever people go missing.
We had.
So you guys
interesting.
Have you guys been back up there?
Yeah. So that was something that we debated. Like,
go back.
Should we go back? My mom was like, "No, you're not going back."
It's such a dude thing to do, right? I almost lost our lives. Let's just go back and see.
That curiosity kind of like sparked in me. It's just like, all right, I've heard about the Wendigo and all these other cryptid creatures. We legitimately saw it. Now we have to go back. Like I mean, come on. We have to.
My rule was we're going back during the day. So we did. We went back 2 weeks later during the day. And I'm actually going to post a video of this on our Instagram. But whenever we went out there, I parked in the spot that right where we were. And behind where we had parked, there were 5 38 special shell casings laying right there. There was a bowl with a spoon in it still next to a fire pit. Bags of chips that had just been opened, didn't look like anything had been eaten. I'm like, I wonder if somebody else, like some poor soul came out here after us, thought like, oh, we're going to camp, ended up having to.
Got into a firefight.
Got in a firefight with a Wendigo. I don't know. I don't know what that was about, but that was kind of weird.
So that's creepy.
Yeah, that whole area too is kind of like the karst region. So like there's lots of caves and sinkholes and water, which I know is also associated with stuff. This is all stuff that we're finding out after the fact.
Yeah.
So like.
Caves are big. It's like
you rolled into the hot spot.
Yeah, the politest thing's fascinating because when we talked to Mark Carpenter about this, something we didn't really understand. But like David Politis he'll overlay maps of missing people with Bigfoot sightings, but you can also do that with cave systems, and they still sort of
really
line up.
Match, which is fascinating. And what he was saying is that. His hypothesis was that a lot of these things probably live underground. Which, if you think about weather events, then if there's going to be a lot of rain and you don't really want to be underground, for water goes downhill, down through the water table. So you can start drawing. I don't know if it's a straight line, but you can start connecting dots. And I wonder if there's not something to some of that.
Or you wonder if it's just like a prime hunting time. If there's a weather phenomenon, there's something it's like they can.
Things would hunker down.
Stuff.
You wouldn't be like, I don't know.
Couldn't hear it coming. I don't know. There's some of this.
Then I'm not sure if those flashing lights are associated at all. I know those are associated with Bigfoot. I know they're associated with like UFO and alien stuff before, which I mean, I think aliens, ghosts, all that. I think those are all the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. But I think, I think. That's definitely the case. But I don't know if they was using the weather. One, I'm not sure if it was manipulating the weather. Two, if it was using it to disguise the flashing in with the lightning. Or if it's another theory that we had, I know like a lot of, they say like ghosts take energy and stuff. Like, is it trying to harness the energy from the electrical storm to then manifest? I don't know. Like I said, we wrestled with this a few different ways.
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting to me, like especially when you try to dig deeper into that, like why were we able to see this thing, and what exactly is it? So, and then with my past experience with like ghosts and demonic entities, there was always this, it has to have a crap ton of energy to be able to manifest itself, but for this thing to be in full, flesh and bone form in front of us, not out of the corner of our eye, like legitimately in front of us, made me feel like this thing like consumed or took in a bunch of energy for it to be able to do that. And, one of the things we're talking about is just like, why were we hearing these things? And then at the very end, we see it. What was it doing? How was it able to circle us without us seeing it? Was the white flash, it kind of going in and out of, like the spirit realm to our realm, and to kind of get to different parts around us, or how was it able to do all this stuff?
Yeah, we've both had encounters. Like obviously, like Mike has had. He hasn't shared all of his demonic encounters. That'd be a different podcast for sure. But he's had experience with demons at work. Whenever people call the police, whenever somebody is demonically possessed, because like you can't call the Ghostbusters. like who's the next thing that's available? Obviously, a lot of it has to do.
Yeah, that, like what we were talking about earlier. It's like, for us, we get called to people who are suicidal or people who are going through some type of mental health, problem. And on some of these runs that I show up and I'm trying to talk to this person, I'm trying to calm them down and, trying to convince them that their life is important, not to kill themselves. And you start hearing some of the things they're talking about. And it's just like, I don't believe you have a mental health issue. I believe you have a legit demonic entity that's messing with you mentally, some type of demonic influence that's now like just flooding your mind with all of these thoughts that's causing you to feel that you yourself are the one that's the problem, or you have a mental illness and that you're crazy. And then they can't go talk to anybody about it because now people tell them, oh no, you have this, you're mentally, you're not sane, you've got these problems. And then it kind of forces them to become suicidal. And, some people, succeed in it and end up like killing themselves over it. It's like the mental health system is not where you need to be. Like you need somebody to talk to that understands like this could be more than what everyone else is telling you it is.
Right. It's interesting you say that as a law enforcement. We have an interview coming up with a guy named Adam Bly, who's an exorcist. He actually teaches exorcism in the Catholic Church, and he's very, the way he presents the entire thing is they run through this whole gamut of protocol tests to make sure that, okay, this isn't mental health issues, this isn't depression, this is oppression, not depression, and they check all the boxes before they get to these real cases. But it sounds like you see them, and so I think it's fascinating because our physical academic post-enlightenment culture will say that's this is that, and you just treat that with this drug, and I think there are pharmakia. I think there are situations where people need things, absolutely, but I think that we live in a time where it's instant gratification. Take a pill for this, take a pill for that, take a pill for this, and oftentimes you're dealing with things all the way from oppression to possession. Yeah, I mean, my best friend's a firefighter in Alameda County in the Bay Area, and he talks about some similar things, like getting calls to things where people are having an episode, a mental health episode, and he's a believer, and he's like, that's not a mental health episode. This is just it's way too wild. It's not. This isn't something natural, right? It's interesting because I think that leads a ton of credence to the conclusions you take from experiences like this as well, because you have experience on the spectrum of this is we've seen enough to know.
I think like one of the things that kind of upsets me though is for someone like myself who's experienced these things and understands a lot of it, when I'm working in, the realm of law enforcement, I get called to these runs. Like I understand what it is, but I cannot act on that. Mm-hmm. We have what is called an ID. It's an immediate detention. So when we show up to the scene of somebody that's going through a mental health crisis, we now have to identify if, we can do what we would, I guess, classify as a medical arrest, where it's, we deem you, mentally unfit to be able to take care of yourself. We cannot leave you alone now. I am going to somewhat arrest you, but I'm going to force you to go to the hospital. And on a lot of these calls that I go on, these people are telling me what they're feeling, what they're dealing with, what they're hearing. And it's just like, okay, like you are legit dealing with something that is more demonic. This isn't an actual mental health crisis, but I cannot, reach over to my beat partner and say, hey, like we're not taking this dude to the hospital. He just needs to talk to somebody else. Like this isn't what he's going through. But I can't.
It's not in the handbook.
I can't do that. So now I'm forced to just, okay, I'm sorry, dude. Mm-hmm. I know what you're going through, but now we have to send you to the hospital. And to me, it's not fair. Right. You're forcing these people to get help for something that really the doctor's not going to be able to help them with, or a psychiatrist's not going to help them with.
Right. No, and I want to add to that, just for people listening, like this is a subset. Like there are a lot of people that have chemical imbalances that need medication. I took anxiety meds for a while, and personally, like just part of my story. Like, and it wasn't. There are things that I think that people deal with that aren't like we have a tendency to over spiritualize a lot of things. Like there are certain people you can't pray their depression away, and I think there's a part of the church that would say, oh, you just got to believe. It's just like anything else. You just got to believe more. You got to find it. And I think there are real situations where people need medicines, but I think 100%. You can't broad brush it that way, and you can't broad brush the other way. You can't say that, like, the thing is, there are absolutely a supernatural world. There are absolutely people that are oppressed and have possession, oppression, and it is real. I mean, you open your Bible. There's a bunch of situations where this is biblical and happens, and good on you guys. I mean, you got to be eyes wide open to this stuff because, like you said, Mike, I think it's very important to realize that when you encounter stuff like this, I truly believe, and we get a lot of this because the podcast and the stuff that the places we go with this, right, is that you got to put on the full armor of God. Like there is people listening, you need to protect yourself when you come into situations where you can have encounters with the demonic, because as Mike said, and as a lot, as I can attest, and I think a lot of people can, it can follow you home if you're not careful.
Honestly, that was one of my problems. Is I never, in the beginning, I didn't really do that. Like even though I was kind of raised in that Christian home, obviously you're young, you're forced to go to church, you kind of got that rebellious nature, and then once I got into the whole ghost hunting and then demonic whatever, I found myself more of wanting to. I know you never do this, you never test the devil, but being young, I was like, okay, no, I want to know for a fact, is this real? So then you start testing the devil and telling the devil, like, I don't believe you have the power you think you do or what people say you do, and then all these horrible things start to happen and you're just like, oh crap, I should have listened to my mom.
Right,
stayed out of that stuff.
I think
but you're young and invincible and you live forever, right? That's how we all do.
It's important to offset it too. That's something that my dad always kind of told me, because I started, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. I got big into looking into giants and the Indian burial mounds, because this whole area is riddled full of all of those. Like we're within a couple miles of 2 different Indian burial mounds right now, and started getting in deep to that. My dad was just reminding me, like, oh, you got to offset the dark with the light. So making sure that I'm spending at least as much time in the Word and that I am studying other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Dude, Indiana's got a lot of that. My wife's from Southern Indiana. She's from outside of Evansville, and the Angel Mounds are there. I'm still trying to get her to. Some point we're going to go when it's not winter or the holidays, and I want to go on a somewhat of a field trip.
That'd be awesome.
To check that out. But they're everywhere, dude. From Ohio, the Ohio Valley, all the way down through Indiana.
Yep.
We have some. Me and Nate went to one out here. It was probably the worst mound expedition of all time, but we did our best. We stayed on one side of the river. We ended up between a river and the mountain. We were like, it was the winter. We're like, is this? We're gonna lose our lives trying to get across this river.
Yeah. It was on a bank. We had to cross the river to get there in the middle of the night. But yeah, I was gonna say that is, you are in, like, I mean, all the stories that we hear on our show, it's that area of the country where there was a lot of ancient activity around there, and you never know. Like, if there could be something underneath your feet, there could be some desecrated site. Who knows what's going on around you? But did you guys see anything else like this, or is that as weird as it's gotten for you two?
We've seen it, or at least me. I've seen it twice now.
Yeah, so we went out.
Dude.
Yeah.
Let's hear this. The sequel.
The sequel, yeah. We went out a couple weeks ago. I guess it's been longer than that. We went out Halloween night, which was probably we went because it was Halloween. We figured, like, oh, it's gonna be.
And that's the exact reason too. It's just like, it's Halloween. Like, what better night to go out and do this?
Yeah, there's this forest around here that is known for having a lot of people go in there and do dark stuff, and we were just curious to see if we would get any more activity with that being the case. So we went out to the same spot. We went out Bigfooting the first time, and immediately had a bunch of knockbacks and a couple yells, like pretty active Bigfoot night. And then we went to a new spot, and it was
it was insane. Like, we found this random road that kind of just led off into nowhere into the woods, and obviously we're like, this is a fantastic idea, let's follow it. And as we're driving down it, like, nothing felt different. It just felt like, hey, we're out for this drive, we're going to find a new location. And the moment we get to the very end of this, the same feeling I had with our first Wendigo sighting came back. and it was extremely overwhelming. I couldn't get out of the car. Like I told him, I was like, we're not getting out. We're not staying here. We need to leave immediately. Like this is not, the place and time to explore this right now. So, Levi, after convincing him, like, hey, I understand you don't feel this right now, but I feel it, and I don't want to deal with this thing again.
Yeah. And I didn't feel it. So we drove out of the woods. We went a different way out than we came in. And then I started getting that same feeling again, like, oh, something here is pretty dark. And that's when.
Yeah, it didn't like chase us or anything like that. This time it was at a distance. It was really weird. Like we're driving out, we're trying to get out of the woods, and we hit a spot where the woods was not as condensed as it was earlier. Like now it's kind of open up and you can see the individual trees and stuff. And, I'm feeling this heavy, depressing, overwhelming feeling. And as I'm just looking out the window, maybe like 100, 200 yards into the woods, you see this thing about 2/3 the height of this tree, like in this tree, like just hanging on to it. The exact same color, the exact same build as the first Wendigo we saw, but it was just kind of like holding on to the tree, but it was weird because it was holding on like upside down. Like you see the body, you see it holding on to the outside of this tree, and you just see its head just like watching us, like tracking us as we're driving out of the woods. And that's all it did. It didn't move. It just stayed there and just like you could see it just watching us. And like I was just like, yeah, we're done. That's enough. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. I didn't see that one at all. I did right before he saw it, and my heart just started racing for some reason. Like I'm just driving, and all of a sudden my heart started racing. I'm like, why do I feel like anxious or nervous? And he's like, dude, I see it again. So I'm not sure if it's one of those things where, since it is a demonic,
it's a demonic something.
I'm not sure if it can. I don't think it's attached itself to us, obviously, but I just probably a bad combination. We were fairly close to the first sighting of the Wendigo, and the fact that it was the witching hour between 2 and 3 on Halloween. Maybe that's it, but yeah.
Yeah, you guys are having a lot of activity. You're doing way better than the Finding Bigfoot show. That's
yeah, you are.
Yeah, so we've started bringing.
They never get anything
because it was just a hobby, and that's what started out as. I listened to your guys' first episode, and you talked about like the different classes of. I don't think we're to the point where we're gonna lose our life savings, like looking for Bigfoot, and our family leaves us, and then we have to live in the back of my truck or something like that. I don't think we're there, but it's definitely something where we go out, like we tell family these stories and stuff, and they want to hear. So now we bring with us cameras, we bring audio recorders. We just got some knockbacks on audio recording that we're going to be posting on our Instagram and stuff like that. So we're wanting to do a Bigfoot documentary, and maybe if we catch anything else, it'll be on there as well. So that's kind of where we're at.
Let us know.
Blurry,
let us know. We need to put on the gear and
definitely
get out there.
That'd be amazing.
I don't know if I want to. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see the.
Yeah, I don't want to see it again either. I don't.
At this point, I'm just open
I'll settle for Patty.
Yeah, Patty all day. Yeah, 100%. I think
Patty
Bigfoot. I know you ask what you think about Bigfoot. I think Bigfoot is an animal, and I definitely think Wendigo is some type of demonic entity. I think it's a different class of demon because I've dealt with demon-possessed people, kind of like we've mentioned. It feels completely different to the Wendigo. Whatever this thing is more powerful. I'm not sure if it's closer to the original Nephilim or if it was a different class, because I know there's different classes of angels. I'm not sure if it was the class of whatever angel fell. I don't know. I'm not sure why it seems so powerful. But Bigfoot, 100% an animal. We've had rocks thrown at us. We've had it scream at us. We've had it follow us out of the woods. We found tracks. There's a video on our Instagram I think there's a video. There's at least a picture on our Instagram of some tracks that we saw. It's a completely different feeling whenever you have like a Bigfoot encounter.
Never felt like I was going to die.
No.
Put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like to me that it's some sort of, enough people see it to have a classification. I think I'm more scared about the things that people that are out there that there's no data on them. So you don't even know we don't even know what's out there. But it sounds like it sounds like this creature's seen enough to have some kind of data that people do episodes on it, and you've seen it, and I don't think it's crazy to see it more than once. It is weird. Some people, Jeff Meldrum, the Bigfoot scientist, he's never seen one, and he came on our show and said, he hopes to see one before it's all said and done, and he's gone out and he's friends with every Bigfooter. So
he's got a Bigfoot.
It's really weird.
He's got a cast.
I've heard that. I've heard that he has that. That's awesome.
Dude, that's his prized possession. We talked about that in the episode. We made sure we got that one
for sure.
That's awesome.
You're like, where do you put that in the loop?
If I find another turd, I'll mail it up. I'll mail it to him. I'll bag it and mail it to him.
You guys have mentioned your Instagram. So if you guys want, tell us where they can find your Instagram, your videos, and
our only social media right now is Instagram. I started it literally last week just because I wanted to have a place where people could go to see us, see what we do. We're wanting to get more active. We're wanting to go to more spots. I have a buddy that has a drone with FLIR on it, so we're hoping to get some nice night FLIR shots. Looking for Bigfoot. I hope we don't see a Wendigo again. But definitely looking for Bigfoot. Yeah, but it's American Cryptid Research Group on Instagram. We're wanting to do a YouTube page where we'll post some longer content. But yeah, as of right now, that's our Instagram. That's where we're at. I got a little overzealous starting it last week, and now Instagram thinks I'm a bot, so I'm blocked out until the 1st. So I should.
You're in Instagram
I'm already in Instagram jail from posting.
That's quick.
But seriously, I started it last week, and I've had so many people contact me with, like, I have a guy that's going to send me a cast of a Bigfoot print that he got up in Minnesota. I have another guy that was talking about how he had like machine gun fire and helicopters over his house in California that wiped out like a bunch of Bigfoot. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that people have. It's definitely out there. I think
you're diving in.
I think not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. We're talking about Bigfoot, so I guess it's a free space here.
We're already there.
No, I literally think
past that.
The government wants to suppress any Bigfoot information because it questions. I think it throws a wrench in their whole evolution theory. I think that's exactly why. I think they don't want it because it throws a wrench in that whole theory. So they don't want us to know. Like, there's tons of videos out there. You just got to search the right place. I'm wanting to go out there. We want to find all the cryptids. We would love to go out southwest and find the chupacabra. Bigfoot's just kind of our main squeeze right now.
Yeah, he's the gateway drug.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And then he started looking for Dogman, and Nate gets real obsessed with the little people.
No, I don't want anything. My mom is terrified of little people. Like, if you even talk a little bit about it, like, it freaks her out. Or like the black-eyed kids, that one, she loses her mind. She's not like that.
Crystal children.
Oh, yeah.
We've done episodes on those ones.
Dude,
Hawaii.
It just gets weirder, gentlemen. I feel like you do a show like this for long enough, and there's like classifications for all these weird things, and you think that you get somewhere, and then it's just like, what is this thing? Why is it doing what it's doing? And Bigfoot is just a mystery. And he's doing his own thing. He's the most elusive. Sometimes they're weird though. Sometimes they go rogue and go crazy. I think some of them are like animals, and I think some of them aren't. I think it's just like any other. Sometimes a bear will wander down into the street and start. You see those videos where they go into like AM PM and start eating, and it's just like, what is this? It's like, it's not an animal, and Bigfoot does a similar thing. It's like it seems crazy, and it's like there's no way he would do that. And I'm like, well, who knows? Maybe he ate some shrooms and just wandered into town.
That's true.
Idea, You never know. Licking one of those magic frogs or something.
Dude, he went to Burning Man, and he's just I
think that's where all your skinwalkers are.
That's exactly right.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for coming on, and appreciate you guys sharing your encounter. It sounds terrifying and similar to a lot of weird things we've heard in other episodes, and hearing people's stories on our podcast. It's like you piece all these things together. It does. Sometimes you feel like you get somewhere, and then sometimes you don't. You feel like you get more confused, but a lot of similar things. I think definitely, when I've seen some of those videos where it sounds like something's calling people, that really intrigued me. Like, I think that's a big part of how these things operate, is they sort of lure you in, and you got to be careful. So if you hear anything in the woods, you guys got some stones though, because you keep going back.
It's something.
We're also armed to the T with weapons. So I mean,
Yes, that's why I'm good with going with you guys. There we go. I can bring my own toys. We could
anytime.
Just feel a little more safe.
We'd love to have you.
I still think though, you never know how you're going to react though when you have that fight or flight moment. You never know if you're going to pull the trigger or you're just going to wet your pants and scream and run.
A little bit of both.
You can't practice that.
Maybe just do all the both. And then you get the yes, and then you get 3 roasted potatoes, and that's how it happens.
Exactly.
Well, guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Thanks,
appreciate
dudes.
it, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All righty.
Have a good one.